Some people die quietly in their sleep. Others die like content creators, determined to go viral before the afterlife loads. I'm talking about the ones who managed to choreograph their own exits. People who turned dying into a brand statement. A philosopher who literally laughed himself to death. An inventor who made gravity his final collaborator. A Viking murdered by a severed head. A Roman billionaire punished with molten gold. And monks who perfected the art of dying slowly on purpose. History's full of tragic finales. These are curtain calls with pyrotechnics. Stick around, because every death in this lineup feels less like fate and more like design. And if you think you've heard weird deaths before, trust me, you haven't heard them told like this. They called it philosophy. I call it dangerous optimism. Meet Chrysippus, the Stoic who could have used a laugh track, and a Heimlich. One afternoon, around 206 BCE, he's watching a donkey eat figs. Apparently, that was peak entertainment in ancient Greece. He decides to make a joke, something about giving the donkey a cup of wine to wash them down. He laughs. The servants laugh. He laughs harder and harder, until he literally can't stop. He collapses mid-guffaw and never gets up again. No heart attack, no stroke, just death by pure, uncut joy. The story's so absurd that later philosophers debated whether it was a metaphor. Nope. Contemporary accounts say he really died that way. His followers buried him with full honours, probably trying not to giggle during the funeral or risk following suit. He'd spent his life teaching the value of moderation, and his last act was failing spectacularly at it. It's poetic, honestly. The Stoic who preached self-control couldn't control his own laugh reflex, and in a way, that's peak human, dying of the very thing you believed in. His last words might as well have been, "I'm dying, but at least the joke landed." Every century since has had its version of this guy, the comedian who doesn't know when to quit. Chrysippus just set the original standard. If you're going to exit, make sure it's funny enough to quote for 2,000 years. Jump ahead to 1912, Paris. A tailor named Franz Reichelt decides he's not satisfied with gravity's dress code. He's invented a wearable parachute, a billowing contraption of silk and ego, and he's about to prove it works by jumping off the Eiffel Tower. Authorities think he's bringing a dummy. He nods, smiles, and shows up wearing the thing himself. Reporters roll film, crowds gather. He climbs the railing, waves to the cameras, hesitates just long enough for everyone to realise. Oh no, he's the dummy. He jumps. The suit folds in on itself like an expensive bedsheet. He falls 187 feet straight into the frozen ground. Dead instantly. Reichelt didn't want to wait for data. He wanted spectacle. He wanted to be first. When the film developed, it became one of history's first viral clips. Silent movie, 0 survival rate. The footage still exists. You can watch the moment the dream collapses frame by frame. And the tragic part? His idea wasn't totally bad. Modern wingsuits use a similar principle, just with actual aerodynamic testing and, common sense. Franz was one prototype away from genius, but hubris doesn't grant beta versions. You don't get patch notes in freefall. His death became Parisian legend, inspiring safety reforms, and a long list of what not to do in aviation. He didn't defeat gravity, but he did teach future inventors a valuable lesson. Ego isn't a parachute. If Reichelt's death was scientific tragedy, Sigurd the Mighty's was pure slapstick horror. We're in 9th century Scotland. Sigurd's a Viking warlord, loud, brutal, big helmet energy. He decapitates an enemy chief named Mile Brichter, the Buck-Toothed. And because subtlety isn't in the Viking manual, he ties the severed head to his saddle as a trophy. On the ride home, the head's teeth scrape his thigh. It cuts the skin. He laughs it off. Days later, the wound festers. Infection sets in. Sigurd dies of sepsis, killed by a posthumous nibble from a guy nicknamed for his dental features. Legend says Sigurd's men buried him with the head still attached to his saddle, like an unwanted travel companion he couldn't ditch even in death. Historians love this one because it's a perfect closed loop. Man kills man carries man dies by man. No gods, no monsters, just human arrogance and bacteria doing their job. There's moral symmetry in that. You live by the sword, you die by the molar. It's also the perfect reminder that every victory lap is one loose tooth away from karma. Archaeologists later found Viking burials, where skulls were wrapped separately, almost like warning labels. Some Vikings learned from it. Others probably laughed and kept decapitating people anyway. But Sigurd's story still stands as history's most embarrassing case of biting off more than you can chew. Maybe Sigurd's story scared them straight. Maybe they just liked organised trophies. Either way, he remains the patron saint of you played yourself. Now for a man who tried to out-invent mortality and built his own execution device instead. Thomas Migley Jr. was a 20th century chemical genius, the kind of guy who should have come with a may cause global catastrophe disclaimer. He gave the world leaded gasoline. Then, apparently unsatisfied, invented Freon, which nuked the ozone layer. 2 inventions, 1 planetary health crisis. Migley genuinely believed he was improving humanity. He'd demonstrate lead's safety by washing his hands in it during press conferences. Spoiler, it wasn't safe. He poisoned himself multiple times and kept going. That's dedication or delusion, depending on the lighting. But karma's patient. By 1944, Migley was paralysed from polio, so he designed an elaborate system of pulleys and ropes to help him turn in bed without assistance. It worked fine, until one morning the contraption tangled around his neck. He strangled in his own engineering. It's almost too neat. The man who filled the air with poison was ultimately taken out by lack of air. A tragedy engineered with the same precision he brought to unleaded death. I like to imagine the universe watching that blueprint draft itself. Somewhere, gravity and irony high-fived. He died surrounded by blueprints, notes, and irony. And if there's an afterlife, I hope someone handed him a clipboard labelled, "You did this." Thomas Migley Jr. didn't just design his death. He beta-tested humanity's. Ready for a classic? Let's pour one out, literally, for Marcus Licinius Crassus, Rome's wealthiest man. This guy had everything: estates, armies, enemies. He built his fortune buying up property from victims of house fires. Usually fires his men conveniently helped along. He was so rich, Romans joked, that no one could count his gold. The Parthians decided to test that. In 53 BCE, after a disastrous campaign, they captured him and, true story, poured molten gold down his throat. Their message? You wanted gold? Have all of it? It's one of history's darkest sight gags. Performance art with third-degree burns. Some accounts say the Parthians then displayed his head, still glistening with cooled gold, to terrify Roman envoys. Others claim they staged a mock theatre performance using his skull as a prop. Even dead, Crassus couldn't stop participating in the economy. Roman historians couldn't resist moralising. Greed kills. But there's something even creepier about it. Humans inventing the most cinematic punishments possible, turning death into theatre before Hollywood existed. You can almost hear the sizzle, smell the lesson. We think we've evolved. We've just swapped the metal for metaphorical gold. We still love poetic justice. We just post it on social media now. The props have changed, but the plotline hasn't. Greed demands spectacle, and spectacle always finds a stage. And finally, the people who didn't just accept death, they curated it. From the 11th to 19th centuries, a sect of Japanese monks practiced sokushimbutsu, or self-mummification. Through years of starvation, meditation, and drinking tree sap that poisoned bacteria, they slowly dried themselves alive. The goal? To become a living Buddha, eternal consciousness inside an indestructible body. When they felt death coming, the monks climbed into a small stone chamber barely larger than a coffin. A tube provided air. Each day they rang a bell to prove they were still alive. When the bell stopped, disciples sealed the tomb. Years later, they reopened it to check if the body had mummified. If it had, the monk was declared enlightened. If not, well, just another skeleton with ambition. More than 24 succeeded. Their preserved bodies still sit in temples, perfectly upright, faces serene, as if smugly saying, "Told you I could." It's devotion that blurs into body horror. The human need for permanence turned literal. And it wasn't just religion, it was control. Every action planned, every outcome measured. They rehearsed death until it cooperated. In a world terrified of decay, they achieved what everyone else only pretended to. Peace through precision. 5 deaths, 5 brand strategies for oblivion. Each one makes the same argument. We don't really fear dying. We fear dying boring. Chrysippus wanted to go out laughing. Reichelt wanted to fly. Sigurd wanted to gloat. Crassus wanted gold. The monks wanted eternity. Different centuries, same impulse. To control the ending when life refuses to cooperate. We build our monuments in blood, fabric, and irony. The only consistent material is ego. When you think about it, death by design isn't an accident at all. It's the universe remixing our best ideas into punchlines. So the next time someone says, "At least they died doing what they loved," remember, what they loved was usually proving a point. If you made it through that lineup without nervously checking your pulse, congratulations, you've survived death by design. And if you want more strange, glorious disasters from history's archives, hit subscribe before karma decides you're next. I'll see you in the next one. Assuming, of course, my research doesn't kill me first.